Here's one thing that I learned when managing a 700K per month sales team. And just to give context as to when this was and what the sales team actually looked like, this was about last year around this time. So when this video comes up as well. And the team was at about 4 to 5 closers, about 3 to 4 triage setters, so doing outbound and booking calls, and then about 2 DM setters as well. And again, just to give more context of how this position came about, I was a closer for about a couple months, and then being the top closer, bringing around 150K to 200K per month in revenue and about almost 2x the amount of units of the other closers. Then I became the manager. And the reason I wanted to share this as well is because if I could go back in time and just really understand what is the one thing that I feel like I made a mistake on and one thing I could actually help with in this process, then I feel like it would have made a lot easier as to how things and how I view things now when it comes to managing a sales team. And also the reason I wanted to talk about this is because frankly, I don't really feel that a lot of people go about this in depth. And when it comes to actually hiring the right people, which is one of the main things I learned within this process, I feel like it could save you lots of time and lots of money. So the first point that I wanted to really talk about was how to actually find these people, right? And so what happens a lot of times is, people will end up going to different communities, try to ask different people, and they don't really have a process of how to find these people. So my top 3 tips within this first tip is really understanding what's the best type of people you can find first, and then how can you categorize with second, third, so on and so forth. So the first thing I would say is always start off with referrals, right? And what I mean by that is a network that you have. So the biggest thing that can help you is if you have other friends or other people who are closers or, own different agencies or different things like that, then, or if you know good closers or good setters, then, you can always ask them or reach out and say, well, obviously good salespeople know other good salespeople. So do you know anybody as well? That's the first thing I would do. And even if you wanted to post on your own personal social media, that could be super helpful as well. The second thing would be going into these communities and these networks as well. So there's lots and lots and lots of Facebook communities. There's lots of, communities that you can reach out via LinkedIn. You can literally be posting a job post on Indeed, keep that rolling 24/7. And then I would say third, I wouldn't say this is last, but there's always an incentive in an agency wants to give you a salesperson, right? So you can always go to all these agencies that already have these salespeople hired and trained. But that would be kind of the first thing I would be, saying where to look and find these people. And I would always say, you're going to always keep this going 24/7, just like you're going, and running ads, you're doing inbound leads, all these different things, because it's going to be super helpful to always be constantly searching for new people and new talent as well. The next thing I would say is actually how to actually, vet these people out. Now, what ends up happening a lot of times is you'll hire a closer or hire a setter or any position that you have on board for your company. And then what ends up happening is after just a couple of weeks, you're like, man, I think I just did the wrong hire. And now it's going to be so hard to train this person. And you feel like, things are not going in the right direction. And either they don't hit KPIs or you let them go because they don't hit KPIs. Or they honestly just leave because they know they hit KPIs as well. So I would always say that you want to be super, super, super strict into the hiring process, meaning you want to have multiple meetings that even get to the point of trying to onboard somebody as well. And so what I mean by this is from the get-go, you want to look at their resume. You want to make sure if they've been doing this for the past couple years, if they also, left previous positions, because that kind of poses as red flags for me as well. If, they're always hopping from, one position to another. And then within the interview process, you can always just have a regular general interview in the beginning. You can have that group when you have lots of people coming in as well. After that, then you can have a one-on-one triage call as well, whether it's for a setter or whether it's for a closer. The reason it's okay that I say to have just a 15-minute triage call for, a closer, because you don't want to be having a 45 to 60-minute call when you already can kind of know what their ability is with sales within the first 10 to 15 minutes. Now, here's kind of a secret as well. What I always encourage is make it harder for that person. and really think of the main objections that your offer has, or your avatar has, or your potential clients have, and really just try to see if that person can overcome those objections naturally. That's what I always see, and really find people to have like an innate skill or just the experience that they put in. And if they don't, that's fine. But here's kind of another point too. You can coach them in that second call, right? And you can really start understanding if they're coachable on that call and say, well, got it. So what does this look like if we were to try this route and maybe try to overcome this objection? Or what did you see when I was trying to throw this? And see if they can pick it up and see if you can coach them. And that's gonna do two things, right? It's gonna see if they're coachable, first of all, which kind of proves their character of being humble and have that humility. And two, if they're gonna be coachable in a way that they're gonna be able to follow directions and boom, be able to just actually perform how you want them to perform on the call. So again, the second point is to be really, really strict in the process. Always look for red flags. And on that second call, you really want to determine if this person's coachable and they have the sales skills ability to perform on your team. This is going to save you lots of time as well. The third thing that most people actually don't look for, or they probably feel like this kind of gets disguised into this gray cloud, is are they a good culture fit? And what does the ramp up process look like? Now, you may hear, well, yeah, I know what a good culture fit looks like, or yeah, I've heard culture matters. But to be honest, this is going to save you lots of time, because you don't want this person to just be, here for a month or two and then kind of doubt, right, if they're a good fit. You want this person to be here for the next 12 to 24 to 36 months and actually say, I don't have to worry if this person is a good culture fit. So what would you say determines a good culture fit? Well, first and foremost, to be honest, you want to look at the current team that you have and understand why they are a good culture fit. And honestly, if they're not, then obviously that's something that you have to fix. But you're going to see a similarity, honestly, with age, with culture, with gender sometimes as well. But you're going to see that there's a reason why these people bond. Maybe, they love waking up super early in the morning, or they love sports, or they love a certain hobby or interest, and they can just talk about that to make things light and fun during the team meetings, right? And you want to be able to think, can this person be a good culture fit within this process as well? Can I see this person actually be a part of this team? And kind of this thought to yourself of saying, if I were to leave this meeting and, probably go to the bathroom, or say I just need a quick break, like, will it be awkward if these people are gonna be with each other, or are they gonna naturally just be able to, be part of a team and it fits in very smoothly? Now that's kind of the first thing when it comes to culture fit. The second thing I would say is, are they a good culture fit for your offer to actually create these sales as well? Now I wanna give a quick story as to what this process actually looks like. So I had a guy that, thought this person was super coachable, thought this person was definitely a great fit, so on and so forth. But it wasn't until one of the setters that was part of our team that said, well, there's something kind of off with this person. And then once I actually started diving in as well, the biggest thing that showed was this person who came on as a closer couldn't close, right? And I was confused as to why they couldn't. And I looked at their past track record, and all they did were B2B offers in real estate and other things like that. So they could talk numbers, they could talk lots of things in that scenario, but this was an offer for B2C, meaning you have to be very aware of, people's emotions, how to, go about different objections and not be super direct. And so I started understanding, man, this person is actually super robotic. And this person probably isn't that great for B2C, could, really strive well in B2B, right? And I was really thinking, I was like, man, I probably shouldn't have done this. And lo and behold, went down to a setter, and then, eventually left the offer because it wasn't a good fit, because, it still wasn't just that connection that was there. So again, the two things within culture fit is, can you see him be a good culture fit within the team? And can you also see him be a good culture fit within the offer, within the sales process as well, which is super important. Now, the next tip is actually when you actually have them inside of the sales process. And to be honest, I never promised these people to be here for 6 months or 12 months or 2 or 3 years or whatever that looks like. I'm very transparent. I say, hey, this is gonna be a 30-day process, kind of like a trial. Honestly, it is a trial, right? And you can be upfront about that. And what we expect you to actually do within 30 days is obviously hit KPIs. So whatever the KPIs and expectations that you have for your salespeople, whether it's a closer, setters, DM setters, you want to be very specific within that onboarding process as to what that looks like, because then they have a goal and they understand that if they do leave or you let them go, right, there's not really any hard feelings because either honestly they didn't perform well or they weren't trained well, whatever the variables are. But hopefully by this point, you minimize lots of different things, right? Where to find these people, always have this 24/7, really making sure that they are a good culture fit, which I just talked about recently, and also really making sure that you have a good vetting process as to what that looks like. So if you go through that process, you will minimize people leaving, hopefully, if you go through this thoroughly, right? So the ramp up process, right? What I always say is I don't look in the numbers in the very beginning within the first week or two, but you want to have a gradual way as to how to actually ramp these people up. Now, what a lot of people do is they end up being very hands-off because they say, well, this person's closing, great, let's just kind of let them do their thing. What I always say within that 30-day ramp-up process is every single day you're going to have one-on-one calls with them throughout this process. And I know it can be a lot of effort, a lot of time, or maybe as an owner, you're like, man, I don't know if I want to put this time, so on and so forth. Then I would say, you just have to do it. Like there's no other way around it because it's going to save you lots of time and money. And then if you do this process incorrectly, you're only going to move backwards and have to do it again anyway. So just kind of get into yourself in the right mindset that like, yeah, it's going to be one-on-one calls. It's going to be 30 minutes to an hour. You just got to put the time in just like you do into marketing, right? So within this process, you want to make sure that you have one-on-one calls and that you have a map of what it looks like as to how they can actually start reaching those KPIs. So in the beginning, I always say, don't look at your numbers, just focus on training. So what I typically do in the first week or two is I say, great, the first week is strictly just training. You're going to do lots of call reviews, right? Of other people's calls. You're going to go through the onboarding, playbook that we have for you. You're going to go through all that process, and we're just going to do lots of role plays, right? Literally, we're just going to do lots of role plays, and they're just observing within the first, week or so being in the team meetings, right? After that, I always say take, maybe 2 or 3 calls or 1 or 2 calls within that second week. And just really make sure that they're understanding, what that process looks like after they go through the script. Again, when you have the one-on-one meetings on that certain point, it's literally just call reviews. You're just reviewing the calls, you look at their end of the day report and you're like, okay, let's focus on this call. And a little tip as well is you can also give some burner calls. So like some calls that may not be financially qualified or not that deep in pain, but you tell the setters, you're like, hey, these are just calls for them to just practice and train on, right? After the 3rd week, right, you probably are ramping up a little bit at a point where they're taking around 3 to 4 calls per day and about 50-50 when it comes to burner calls and qualified calls. And then you're really going to call reviews a little bit more. You're observing how they are into team meetings as well. Again, you always have your ears and eyes super open about specific things. And then after that 4th week, honestly, at that point, they're taking 5 to 6 calls per day or whatever that looks like. They're hitting KPIs minimum. And they're going to be exceeding that and keeping consistent within the long term. And then what I do after that is I start decreasing the amount of one-on-one calls to about 2 or 3. And after a long, term point, then you're going to be there on a weekly basis as well. Now, here's kind of one thing I wanted to let you know as well that most people actually miss out with in this ramp up process, right? You want to make sure that you are always strict with the one-on-one calls and that you're never really in a position where you're letting loose with this one-on-one calls just because they performed great in the first week. Because what ends up happening is then they're gonna feel like, well, now I can kind of just do whatever. And then they kind of creates that bad habit and culture for the team and just for the company as well. So really understand what that ramp up process looks like because it's, again, going to save you lots of time and lots of money within this process as well. Cool, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, I'm just, sharing my stories of how I got some companies to 500K per month, what it looks like when I was managing those teams as well. And also just giving you some updates as to what this looks like. If you found this valuable as well, feel free to comment below if you want, or like or share, whatever that stuff looks like. But yeah, I'm gonna keep posting. If you want even more things like specific topics, I already have some topics in mind that I'm gonna already talk about, but if there's anything that you want me to share, I'm just gonna be as open as possible and just share things that honestly, most people out there just don't share. I like to really get into a position where you can get the most value just simply because I'm sharing, and then you can also share from the experiences or learn perhaps from the stuff I've gone through. And it's kind of just a way of just me just almost like writing down notes, or instead of just putting into like a journal or like a Google Drive, like I'd rather just put it here just to kind of see an update as to where I'm at as well. So Hopefully you enjoyed this as well. Again, I'll put more videos. If you want to see more videos of specific topics, just put in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon.